Welcome to the AirCon Vault, recordings of the live streams from AirWiggle's audio conference. These are made free thanks to our sponsors: A Sound Effect, Game Audio Learning, Kilohertz, Audio Kinetic, Soundcuts, Tsugi, Boom Library, Sound Warriors, and AirWiggles, the online home for audio people.
I'm Matthew Marteinsson. This is going to be Turn Up the Weird. So, what are we going to be talking about? It's my view that weird is where you get your personality from. And how weird you can get is obviously very game dependent. Sometimes real weird in one game is normal in another. But I always think we should strive to push the setting, the genre, the mechanics to as weird as we can get away with. Some of my best stuff has always come from being weird. And I've been lucky to work on games that have really focused on that as well. So I think we should always try to find the line of weirdness for the game that we're working on and push right up to it. And, cross it to find that and then dial it back and sit there. Make it as weird as interesting as we possibly can at any given chance. Always ask yourself, can this be more weird? So, who am I? Why am I talking about this? So I'm Matthew Marteinsson. I have been doing game audio since 2003. I was doing music engineering for bands and TV and film before that. The first game I ever did game audio on, I also did a stint as a tester in there as well, QA. But my first game I did game audio was NHL 2004. I was the third person on the audio team for that, which was an experience, that's for sure. The last released game I did was called Griftlands at Clay Entertainment. I've been at Clay for 13 years now. I've been lucky to stick with one studio for a really long time and do a lot of really cool, weird, interesting games. Probably most notably Mark of the Ninja and Don't Starve are two of the really big ones with them that I've done. I used to co-host a podcast called Beards, Cats, and Indie Game Audio with Gordon McLadry from A Shell in the Pit. I also used to co-host Real Talk with Kevin Regamy from Power Up Audio. I started doing Carousel Con, which was a conference outside of GDC that was free. And I started the Game Audio Slack that is still running out there, which is pretty awesome. I also co-organized a conference in Bellingham that was about getting the Seattle and Vancouver game audio communities together. And currently I'm organizing our local Vancouver game audio meetup. I make some music and occasional sample libraries as well. I like to do ambient music and get weird there. So that's kind of me. What else? Oh yeah. Musically, I've always been into punk rock, indie rock, and jazz stuff. It's kind of a background of where I came from, which I think really helped me lean into the weird side of things. Because when I got into indie rock and punk rock, that was like anybody can do it. Anybody should pick up an instrument and make a band. It's like skill level is not important. It's just about doing it. And a lot of weird stuff came out from that. And jazz, just growing up and being raised in the kind of the improv scene, where you just get up and play, and you learn the rules so that you can break the rules, and you take things in odd territories. So musically, I was set up to crave the weird. So that's where I'm coming from. I've been at this a while. I've done some weird games. Hopefully I can share some of that with y'all. So start at the top. It's really good to start thinking of this right from the get-go. But if you don't, you can always get weird later on. It's not a problem. It's really just about the mindset more than anything. It's the thinking about trying to do stuff off the wall and weird than any one specific technique. There's not a true guidebook of rules that you should follow to get weird. And gear isn't the important thing either. Like, cheap is probably a great driving innovator for getting weird. So it's not about having the latest, best, whatever. You know, I'm a modular synth person, but I don't ever tell anyone to get into that hobby because it's a giant muddy pit. It's super fun, but whoa, is it expensive. I've been doing weird way before I could afford anything good to record or do weird things with. So there's a lot of, like, you can do a lot of stuff with what you've got. Just make do with things or buy cheap things as well. A lot of stuff to be done with cheap stuff. So let's start. Oh, roll back a bit. Going to break this up into 3 categories: source, design, and implementation. I think you can get weird at every one of those levels. And if you've missed a chance to get weird at one, there's always the next one. So it's kind of like this doesn't stop. It's not like, oh, if I missed recordings, the weird things, I'm done. I guess I'm never making anything weird. You could always do something at each level, you know, to implement some weirdness into things. So let's start with source. Source probably is the most important, is the easiest place to start getting your stuff weird with. So what can we do? You got weird things, you got weird mics, you got your mouth, you got mowing stuff, you got an environment that can get weird. So starting with your things, just start looking for things that make weird sounds. Anything mechanical often makes weird stuff. Toys, electronics, medical equipment. Some examples I've always, like, I always hold up the Destiny example is really, really high. Destiny, the Destiny audio team recorded some stuff with a breast pump and went on. This is another thing about getting weird. You can often use this to engage with your communities of your games as well. So Destiny, the team, recorded this breast pump, went on to social media and said, we recorded this weird thing. We recorded with a breast pump. Where do you think that is in the game? They never said where, but it's like as a piece of some weapon somewhere is in there. And the community got really engaged in trying to figure out, well, where did this weird thing end up? And that was being somebody in the right frame of mind to hear this thing and go, that's a weird thing. I should record that. Because that's doing something that's oddball and unexpected. So always keeping your eye and ears open to what's around you and be ready to record any machine. I was once in a hotel and whenever you flush the toilet, it sounded like a creature screaming. So I flushed the toilet a couple times and it's like, this is repeatable. It does this all the time. So before we left the hotel, also the lights were buzzing in that room really badly. So before we left, I grabbed my recorder. Wasn't a great one. It was just what I had on me. And I sat with the door closed, with the lights off, in total pitch black in this hotel bathroom, flushing the toilet a bunch of times because it screamed like crazy. It was super good. And I was like, there's no way I can miss out on grabbing this weird thing and putting it into my library. And I had no purpose at the time, but it's there. It's ready to be like, I'll bet you I can use this for something. Another time I was doing some water stuff. I was a creature that was probably a Don't Starve creature. And it was something that existed in the water. And I thought, well, sound through water sounds differently than normal. Like that's a weird thing. How can I record sound going through water? Well, I don't have any waterproof mics, but I do own some saran wrap and a 57 that if it dies, it dies. It's no big loss. So I wrapped saran wrap around it and then plunked it just into the water slightly above where the saran wrap went and put my face in the water and screamed underwater and recorded through basically my made up hydrophone as much as I could scream underwater. And it sounds totally bizarre. So that was just like, how can I approach this differently? How can I change? And the SM57 was fine. It was great. Didn't get wet, so it's still in my arsenal. So it's about like finding weird things, also putting yourself into weird situations that will change how the sound reacts to things. So talking about microphones, you've got contact mics, you got geophones, you've got electromagnetic microphones, you've got old carbon mics that sound like garbage, but that can be the thing you're going for. There's hydrophones and other waterproof microphones. Cheap microphones can be great because you can put them in dangerous places. And if, sometimes those aren't places you want to be, but there's great sounds coming out of them. So if you have some cheap mics in your arsenal, it's really great. It's almost even better than the expensive ones because you're like, sure, I'll just stick this in there and see what happens. Your mouth. Let's talk about your mouth. I have used my mouth for probably more creatures than I haven't, especially in Don't Starve. When I started that game, I am like a ton of the creatures in that. So getting used to like making your voice into an instrument, and you can get really weird with stuff, and you can copy sounds that you hear and then record that. You can change your mouth, as I wrote down. What I mean by that is, one of our sound designers put a bunch of ping pong balls in their mouth to make it when they were making sounds. So that was something to change the physical aspects of your mouth so that it sounds different. You can talk through things, talk through tubes, or and then make performances in mind to the processing that you're going to do afterwards. So one of the big things I do is a lot of Varispeeding. I'll talk about that on the design part, but talking about it here now too, because it's directly related to when you're performing. If you know that you're going to Varispeed something up or down, you can perform it faster or slower at the pitch you can do, so that when you speed it up, slow it down, it changes according to like it's closer in line to what your end up result is. But if you keep all of that in mind, it really helps with getting what you need. Ghost of Tsushima, I think, is where I originally heard about it, where they would do slow down bird recordings, record their voices mimicking them, and then speed them back up to the like actual speed. And they got these really cool birds that were different and kind of oddball, but weren't bird recordings. So it was actually super isolated and stuff. And there's a lot of like benefits to that. But you can take that even weirder ways. Like they were trying to get legitimate sounding birds. But if you take your camel recordings, pitch them down, record your version of copying that, and then speed it up, you're going to get something different. That's not exactly the camel, not exactly your mouth, like, and your mouth allows you to get a lot more expressive personality than you would get from straight up animal recordings. Generally you can't really quite get happy, sad, ennui from an animal recording, but you can perform that. So that's a like really fun thing to do. Bowing stuff, and recently I've been introduced to friction mallets. Friction mallets are really cool, and bowing things. More things will vibrate than you realize, and the things that shouldn't vibrate, from bows are often the most interesting, weird stuff. So don't just bow your violins, your cellos, your stringed instruments, more than just bowing your cymbals. Just bow anything. Load it up with rosin and just like see what you can get to vibrate. Buy cheap bows. This is great because it doesn't take a lot to. I think my bows have been like $20 or $30 a piece. You're gonna wreck them, and that's part of the thing. Is you buy them, the cheap ones, so that like, yeah, this will die in the name of the cause of making this weird sound. And friction mallets are a really neat, interesting thing where they're kind of less destructive. But we did some really cool recordings with some garbage cans lately and friction mallets. That was really neat. Drying rack, see? Does bow quality affect the sound quality? I don't think so, because it's really all you're really asking is to get something to start vibrating. So as long as it's tight and like there's still string threads on it, hairs, as long as it's still a bow, I think that's all that really matters. I've never played around with expensive ones because I kind of don't want to waste the money on something really nice and expensive when I'm just going to wreck it. So the other thing, we're generally obsessed with a perfect recording environment. We want dead silence, blah, 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 like, no reflections, really nice stuff. Getting weird can often be embracing whatever crappy place you have to record and what oddball dumb thing about it that would ruin a normal recording but can then become the point of your recording. When I was doing music, we would always set up all the drums, set up all the mics, everything's wonderful, and then you'd throw up one mic in some weird corner of stuff and slam it through a dirty compressor or whatever, and just be like, that's the weird fucked up mic that, like, is there. Maybe it's going to be cool, maybe it's not, but you'd always capture just one weird thing. So changing your environment to embrace the weirdness. If you've got, oddball echoes or verbs that are coming out, like, embrace that. If you've got something that resonates, like, put your mic right next to it. You're doing some big impacty stuff and you've got a piano in the room, like, hold the pedal down and record the piano vibrating along with stuff and get those resonances and stuff, and like embrace that that's what you're going for. Like, it's a shame when it's there when you don't want it, but if you go for it, it becomes an interesting thing. I've also heard of people, when they were talking about PZM mics, putting big bottles of water in front of a PZM mic and recording kind of the weirdness of the water resonating and stuff. Are shotguns best for that type of sound recording? I guess it depends. I'd say they're very good for it, for sure. If there is a weirdness that you're trying to isolate within a room, shotgun's definitely going to help a lot with that. I actually have mostly little Omni mics, so I go with what I've got, kind of, so I haven't explored a lot with really isolating stuff with shotgun mics. I just kind of go for it and be like, this is what I'm getting. Looking at my notes here, what else have I missed? A lot of the times too, this is like being open to recording the weird stuff wherever it is, whenever it's happening. So having some sort of recorder is always great to have. But even your phone, getting the really weird sound of any recording is better than not having it at all. So if all you've got is your phone and you hear this weird thing, record it. Maybe if it's not even usable, it's still a reference to recreate said weird thing. Maybe that's your reference that you then copy with your mouth, and you get an even weirder thing of, like, I heard this weird thing, and here's me copying with my mouth the weird thing. And so it's like, you add even more weirdness as you keep going to the step. So always be open and ready for those weird things to happen to you, and embrace them when they do. So now that we've got a giant pile of weirdly recorded source of weird things, oddball machines that we've got in weird rooms next to resonating pianos and bottles of water, and we've been screaming in a bathtub. Now what are we going to do with it all? We're on to the design side of things. I mean, at the very basics, just layer in some weird stuff. Even if you're doing something very basic and rudimentary, like put in something weird and see what happens. Put in the total opposite of what you think you should do for a thing, and just see if it adds something interesting to it. There's just a lot of like making yourself ready and willing to try things that shouldn't work. I did a whole other talk one time about having a kind of culture of ready to fail in your design. Like everything was about like push it, and there's a very good chance this isn't going to work because I'm going to take these chances and see what happens. So just be ready to give yourself time too to try out the weird things. Something I've recently come across, I do a lot in my own music. I make ambient music, is doing audio to MIDI to drive things. Taking an audio file, using whatever software is in your DAW to translate that into a pile of MIDI notes, and then using that to drive a new synthesizer, a automation, even, you know, like whatever it is you can now drive from this series of notes that have been derived from this other completely different thing. And then you can mix it in, and you've got something that's related to your other thing, but it's weird because it also gets weird because audio to MIDI isn't perfect. And I hope I can keep my audio to MIDI stuff existing in the way it does now. I don't want it to get too good. I don't want it to be perfect. I want it to be slightly off and oddball, because that's where the interesting stuff comes in, when it's like it didn't quite get it right, and that's cool. So that can be an interesting way to add new layers and create new content from the thing you've already got. Morphing and vocoding is something I still do a lot of. There's a lot of really great morphing plugins that exist now, and even the old vocoding stuff does, where you can run two samples against each other and create something new from that is unexpected. And that can be this case like the first part of take something totally unexpected and morph it against what you've got. You know, it's a lot of just trying something that you wouldn't expect. IRs are great for this too. When you don't use reverb impulses, use something else. Use those weird recordings you've got. Throw them into your IR. I really like Varispeed over pitch shifting that keeps the time constant. So Varispeeding will mean as you raise and lower the pitch, the length will shorten and lengthen accordingly. And that's where I go back to keeping in mind when you're doing your recordings. If I know I'm going to Varispeed down an octave, I will attempt to perform it twice as fast. So then the performance slows down to the point at which I'm using it until I want it, what I'm looking for. Something that I've learned from my steps into the modular synth world is audio rate modulation. Most one second. Most modulation that we think of, or I think of, is from LFOs. So audio rate modulation is taking audible oscillators and using those to modulate. So it's like incredibly fast modulation, and it creates totally different sounds than you would think of as a regular up and down modulation in a ways. So I've been finding there's lots of ways it's not a modular synth specific thing, or at least not a hardware specific thing. There's tons of soft synth modulars that you can get into, and you can start audio rate modulating stuff. lot of times it ends up sounding like a form of distortion and stuff, but it's really neat, and you can do it subtly. And that super high speed modulation can be something really interesting and different. And in that same arena is where I started getting into envelope followers, so that you can take the envelope of one thing and force it upon another. A lot of the morphing plugins will do this kind of stuff as well too. So you get your shape from one place and your tones from another. So you can make something that should never have had a fast attack in the way it does. You can now make it happen. So that can be a really fun thing to do. So that's kind of some of the designs. Of course, there's a million more weird things you can do when you're at the design stage of things. It's just a lot about taking chances, doing stuff that you might not normally do, doing stuff that you are unexpected, So you've done a bunch of recording of source. You got all of these weirdly weird sounds. You designed this beautifully awesome, weird, whatever it is, there's stuff, and now your time to put it into the game. Implementation. Yet again, a lot of with the implementation, you can layer things. So you can continue to layer more weird things. If you've made the thing and you're like, it's not weird enough, you got another chance to throw in another layer of weirdness on top of things. As Daniel was saying too, going back, recording at high sample rates can be really great when you're going to get into that super crazy pitch shifting stuff as well. And that's another source I have found when you record at super high sample rates and then Varispeed it down like a bunch of octaves, throw out everything that is in the low and just look at like what came down from on high and is this weird stuff that you never normally heard. Like that can be really great because it's not normal at all to hear that super high frequency stuff. So that can be a really cool thing for sure. Record at high frequencies, definitely. Back to the implementation. So because you're now running stuff on the game level, this is where you can start tying in your game parameters and your events and stuff that's happening to make weird things happen on purpose at certain times, and only like you can make this game dependent so that like event A is pretty normal most of the time, but when Bob the Caterpillar comes across the screen, that event changes and morphs into weirdness. So you can tie those things together, that maybe your weird layers come and go depending on who's on the screen and stuff. So that can be a really great thing to make your weirdness like applicable to everything that's going on in the game. Something I've found myself doing a lot of is doing super tight, like doubling slapbacky delays with high feedback on stuff. It can impart this metallicness to things, but because of that super tight, like I'm talking like under 100 milliseconds, like 120 at the most, you start getting with the high feedback, you start getting weird filtering and stuff going on there as stuff piles up. And so it really changes the character of the sound in some weird ways that I really love. Very game dependent, if that'll work for you. And it's another stage to get more modulation in. Like, all our middleware allows us to modulate stuff. So get in there and do more modulating. Make the stuff just come and go in oddball ways. Flangers and phasers, there is something more than just the delay. It is a super tight delay, but there's I can't remember, there's a pitch shift that's going on as well. It's like the difference with chorusing as well. But all of that realm of time delay modulation, yeah, it's all based on flanger is actually okay. So flanger is varying the delay speed, because historically it was used with the tape machine, and it was actually putting your thumb on the flange of the tape machine so that it would wobble back and forth. But yeah, all of those, if you set up your delays tightly, right, you can get a chorusing, you can get a flanging, you can do, like, you modulate parts of it. It's cool. But you can get that live. That's the real thing. Like, cool thing is you can get that going on live, and you can get into those crazy modulation stuff while you're going. And just get into automating this stuff of like, when does the weird stuff come and when does the weird stuff go, and like make it very intentional with where that stuff sits. Is something I try to do. Like, I want to call attention to the weird stuff. I don't want the weird stuff to slide into the background. I want to be there and be the personality for the sounds that are going on. That's to me the point, that if you do the normal thing, you know, it's just normal, and it's just there, and it'll be fine, and it'll, you know, it can serve the utility of the game, and that's sometimes what we got to do. There's nothing wrong with that. But all of the sounds that I feel the community have loved of the games that I've done have been the weird things, the stuff that I took a chance on, like, they might not like this might not work, this might go against expectation. And that's where the things that have really worked best have always been. And that's the stuff people have loved most of all, is, you know, when a made weird turkey gobbles with my mouth for Don't Starve, and that became a thing that people would ask me to do at conferences and stuff. So, like, that was a fan favorite, and I was like, this is so weird and dumb, but it was awesome. That was where the personality came from. So that was super quick. Just rattled right through it. But wrapping it up, always be asking yourself, can I make this more weird? And at some point, you're going to say, no, I can't. You know, every game has a different threshold of how much weird it can take. But you should strive to, like, get up to that line. You should ask the question until the question is answered no. You know, if you miss a chance to ask the question, that's the greater loss. You know, in some cases, you can't get it as weird as maybe you'd want. But if you've asked and you've tried, that's the most important things. It's never too late to get weird with your sounds and in your game. You can do it at any point. You know, when you're recording, when you're designing, when you're implementing, everywhere you can ask, how can I get this more weird, and make a stab and an attempt at that. Keep doing it until somebody complains. A lot of people don't know what they really want until they hear it, but they will know when they've had too much. So just keep making stuff weirder and weirder until somebody, like, whoa, wait a minute. And then you dial it back. But you don't know where the line is until you cross it. You got to keep pushing. And you can probably go further than you think it is. Your initial thoughts of what you should do and where you can get to is probably a lot more conservative than you think it is. You can probably get real weird. Yeah. And it's all in an effort to find that unique personality for your game. And we all want to make each of our games this wonderful, rich, weird world that players can live in and find their fun and have a great experience with. And I think it's on us to give that to them and to push things as far as we can in that regard. So be bold. Go out there and be bold with your weirdness. Here's some context stuff, and I am ready for any questions anyone else has. I tried to catch some of them as I was talking. Time to gobble gobble. What's my weird first move when it comes to making it weird, I probably do something with my mouth. Honestly, I probably start with the source and I try to record some stuff with my face. I always have this mic is like here all the time, just hooked up to my DAW. I've got another mic here ready to go that I can plug into something. I love handheld mics that I can just like grab and screw around with, and it's all about being willing to make a fool of myself more than anything. Just be no shame, whatever comes, just do it with my face. So that's my first thing. I definitely like, can I record something to go into this? And then I guess the second thing would go to my library and search for the opposite of what I think I need and see what that pulls up and try putting in something just so, in some cases, it's about going so wrong that you get inspired to do something else. So that would be my first moves. Another fellow Vancouver. Hello. How can you join the Vancouver Game Audio Group? The Vancouver Game Audio Group is a Google group. So if you go to Google Groups and you search for Vancouver Game Audio, you can ask to join. We've got a meetup later this month. We do month to month, super casual. I just have us all meet at a coffee shop. So I'm just going to reach for my water, and if anyone else wants to ask more questions. Or if there was any questions I missed. Is there any times you've gone too weird even for yourself? It's a good question. I don't know if I have. I've been lucky to work on some weird games. I got to be honest. Like Don't Starve is a bizarre little world. And Invisible Ink had some. It was sci-fi, but it had some oddballness. And Griftlands was weird as well. So I have made stuff that people have not liked. I don't know if that was necessarily because it was too weird or it was just bad, but I've had to dial back stuff. I generally go with other people's opinions when it comes to the too weird, so I just keep going and wait for somebody to be like, hey, I don't like that, and dial it back. Synthesis. What kind of synthesis do you prefer to achieve the weirdest results? I hate saying things that are expensive. I hate recommending expensive things, but I'm deep in the Eurorack modular world now, so that's where a lot of my weirdest synthesis stuff comes. I have a module that is a sampler basically, so I will prep samples and put to that, and then start running them through the weird rack of stuff. So that's kind of, it's not really a certain kind of synthesis, but I guess, I don't know, I don't have a great answer for that. So I'm not set up, unfortunately, to play weird examples. I didn't think about that. I'm sorry. In your imagination, think of all the weird things. With how much you've embraced weirdness, has there been times when you've had creative blocks? If so, do you have any tips to go even weirder? Yeah, I mean, we all experience creative blocks for sure. I am not immune to that, as with the best of you. I have definitely been DAW open, staring at it, having no idea what to do. I've probably grabbed a microphone or moved over to my synthesizer, my modular rack, and just started plugging things or making any kind of sound with my mouth is probably how I try to kickstart it, or do the like first word that comes to my mind, put it in the library search and just pull something. I definitely find when I'm blocked getting anything moving, I will get more creative if I'm moving. If I'm moving, then I have a okay. Well, that's not right. But what if I try this? What if I try? As long as I start moving, it's the way to get past that block. Robbie's asking, what's my favorite weird Eurorack module? I got a frequency shifter that I'm really into lately. That's kind of cool. I've got a weird kind of thing that it's a distortion ring modulator, I guess, but it only uses one signal. It goes through an LED. That's like kind of cool in a quick little weird way. I guess the weirdest stuff I like in the Eurorack is getting into the audio rate modulation. That's the stuff. I don't have a Morphogene. They look really cool. I use a Nebula too for my sampling stuff. So that's it. But there's so many great sampler kind of modules in Eurorack. So grab any of them. Have you ever used no input mixing? Yes, I actually have a sample library based off of a noise album I did of zero input mixing. It's super fun. I also have, along with my modular stuff, I have a guitar pedal collection. So I have a Mackie mixer for zero input, and I have a passive mixer that also does cross inputs feedback stuff. Zero input is really cool if you can do that kind of if it serves your purpose. It can be some really interesting stuff when you learn how to ride the signal into the interesting waves that it can create, and not just total wall of distortion. There is more depth to zero input mixing than you might think. To anyone who doesn't know, no input or zero input mixer feedback is where you take a mixer and you physically plug the output to the input and make it feedback, and it feedbacks like crazy, and can do really cool stuff. I heard it once described as the circuits singing, which I think is pretty cool. What's usual effects combinations for weirdness? I do a lot of delays. I do a lot of work with delays and heavy compression, reverb into heavy compression, like just slam it. Crazy pitch shifting. It's a lot of it is, to me, is about making the machine make sounds that I couldn't come up with myself, and finding sounds that I couldn't previously hear. So, high frequency stuff, bring it down into the audible range and like see what's there, and raise the gain and I'm losing myself here. Just find the things you couldn't hear previously and bring them out. That's I love that kind of stuff. Could zero input be doable in the box? I believe some people have made software just to do that. I'm not saying it's not. It's a little harder, but it is possible. And I think there's some people who have made standalone software with that in mind. If you go out there looking around the corners, there's some interesting software that's been made for kind of the noise music scene and stuff that follows that stuff. I can't remember it right now, but there's some, I know of some people. I'm searching right now. There's a piece of software I use, Ongenku. because I think that person has some stuff. Oh yeah, this one is a little bit more ambient, but it's this guy's name who I can't pronounce because I'm horrible with names. But let's see if I can drop this in the chat. Go check that guy's stuff out. He does a lot of really weird standalone stuff that can be really neat for doing oddball stuff in the box. People asking about music, thanks very much. Madask on Bandcamp. I'm pretty much Madask everywhere. If you find that name somewhere, that's probably me. Trying to keep up with the questions. Hopefully I'm not missing it. If I miss you, post it again. I'll try and get to it. What's your favorite animal which produces the weirdest chant, growl, grunt that you could use in your designs? What did I find the other day that was really great? I love animals that don't sound like how they look. Like, it's like this giant thing will squeak in a weird way, and you're like, what? But I don't know what I now put on the spot. I can't tell you what is my favorite creature. I end up using a lot of regular stuff that people do, and it's just fine, like going through with a fine tip chrome through those libraries of creatures and just finding the fragments of stuff. In some cases, it's like not taking the whole growl, it's taking the tiny little vocal phlegmy bit at the end and then raising the gain like crazy and stretching that out and finding something on it, or like taking out the whole middle bit, and doing stuff like that. So I don't have a good answer for specific creature that I love. Well, I'm trying to scroll and see what there's people saying. Somebody's mentioning, Nick is mentioning PaulXStretch. Yeah, PaulXStretch is still out there. It is a plugin now, as well as a standalone program. It can be super great. Another thing that I have gotten into when it's appropriate, when I'm in like a sci-fi world or a digital world, take something, throw it in PaulXStretch, stretch it out, whatever, so that it's now incredibly long, and then squish it all the way back up again, and embrace all the weird artifacts that you're going to get with that. I love the artifacts left behind by like stuff. You used to be very concerned with the purity of things and making the processing seem as little as it could be. And then I just went off the rails and been like, no, I'm going to embrace all the weird glitchy badness that comes from this, and like deep dive into making things as bad as possible, and then almost getting rid of the original and just dealing with the weirdness that comes from the over processing. All right, did I answer everything? I feel like I was going a mile a minute there. New questions from Adam. Do you use any granular processing? I definitely have a bunch of granular plugins, and I'm trying to. I've yet to really hit on my own personal stride with using granular processing in my workflows. That really helps. So it's a bit not yet. I want to. It's the hot thing in plugins these days, and I'm trying, but it isn't quite hitting. Thanks everybody for coming out and hanging out and listening and asking questions. Thanks a lot, everybody. Super fun.